Welcome to The Free Will Show, a podcast that provides a beginner-friendly introduction to free will while also exploring cutting-edge developments on the topic. I'm Taylor Sear.
And I'm Matt Flummer. In this episode, we talk with Anna Viatkina about Plotinus' views on freedom and responsibility and how it relates to contemporary rational abilities views.
Thanks for listening. I'm happy to introduce Anna Viatkina, who is a postdoc in theoretical atomic physics at the Technical University of Braunschweig in Germany. She earned her PhD in physics from Johannes Gutenberg University in Mainz in 2022, and afterwards earned an MA in philosophy from Leibniz University, Hanover in 2024. And that's where she defended a thesis called The Will for Good, Asymmetric Theories of Freedom and Moral Responsibility, which is largely focused on the Stoic and Plotinian views of freedom. So in addition to her interests in physics and philosophy of physics, her philosophical research interests lie in the direction of philosophy of religion, namely in negative theology and in metaethics and ethics, especially in the Platonistic virtue ethics of Iris Murdoch and Simone Weil. Given her recent work on Plotinus on free will, we've invited her to join us to talk about Plotinus today. So thanks so much for coming, Anna. Welcome to the show. Could you start by telling us a bit about your work, yourself, and how you came to be interested in working on free will?
Thank you for having me.
Of course.
So first of all, how I get interested in philosophy and in physics together is by reading too much science fiction when I was young.
Love it.
Certain type of science fiction, so-called hard sci-fi, is in fact very philosophical. You get all these problems of AI, problems of consciousness, problems of personal identity, of language, maybe how if we meet aliens, could we ever communicate with them or understand them? So the science fiction stuff is very philosophical, and I thought, I should pursue it. But at that moment, I didn't know that philosophy is what does those things. It's like research into this time travel or so on.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, so I thought, physics, that's what I should do. That's the path. So I went to study physics, and then by the end I understood, I'm already in my master's in physics, and I haven't heard anything about time travel. Something is wrong. Something is wrong here. And at that point, I started to read different contemporary analytic philosophy. I think I started with Thomas Nagel and such things. But then, I was also very interested in history and history philosophy. And in my master's in physics, we actually had a mandatory class on the history of philosophy.
Oh, wow.
And here's the story how I got interested in Plotinus specifically, because it was quite funny. Our professor had to cram all history of philosophy into one semester.
Wow.
So he left lots of things out, and so we went from pre-Socratics, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Epicurus, Stoics, but early Stoics, like Zeno, and then Saint Augustine. And I thought, it's 500 years in between.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I went to the professor and asked, was there anything in between of Stoics and Saint Augustine? And he was like, you think of Plotinus. And then he recommended to me a book by a French historian, philosopher, Pierre Hadot, Plotinus, or the Simplicity of Vision, I think it was called. And it's a little nice introduction to Plotinus. From then on, I was hooked on Plotinus.
Okay.
So I thought it was very beautiful, and the way of expressing those Platonic truths and
Hmm.
Platonic worldview really spoke to me. So since then, I'm interested in Plotinus specifically.
Yeah,
Cool. Interesting.
very cool. We've been starting our episodes this season by asking about the historical context of the figures that we're talking about. So, could you start by giving us a bit of historical context for Plotinus? You've already mentioned, the time period, but what were some of his influences? What were some of his most widely read texts, or any other background that you think might be helpful?
Yes. So Plotinus lived in the end of like late Roman Empire, so it's 3rd century AD. So he was born around the year 205,
Hmm.
and apparently in Egypt, and to an upper class family, because he had the leisure to pursue philosophy in his life. That
Right.
means you're upper class.
Yeah.
Um, by nationality, we don't really know. We cannot place him because, for example, from his writings, it is evident that his mother tongue is Greek.
Hmm.
So he was probably born in Egypt, but his name sounds very Latin. So
Hmm.
Plotinus, it's a Latin name. For example, there was a Plotina who was so the wife of Emperor Trajan. It's a really Latin name, but
Hmm.
his like mother tongue is Greek, so we cannot say which nationality he was. So, but what we know is that he went to study philosophy to Alexandria when he was about 28 years old. And he studied philosophy with Ammonius Saccas, which is who was like a famous teacher at the time in Alexandria. Uh, he was probably a Platonist, though we don't know anything about his particular views, because maybe he wrote nothing, maybe he wrote and it disappeared. We don't know.
Hmm.
But yes, another interesting thing about Ammonius Saccas is that he taught two other famous philosophers apparently, both named Origen or Origenos.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
So Origen, the Christian, like who was very influential, very well read in
Right.
antiquity and later, and Origen, the Platonist, who's uh, who was also influential, but a little bit less. Let's say,
Yeah.
yeah, and Plotinus, of course, who uh, still has influence up to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, so this is the beginning of the story. Uh, so Plotinus spent around 10 years with Ammonius in Alexandria, and then he decided to travel. He wanted to, reportedly, he wanted to learn more philosophy of the East, of the Persians and the Indians.
Hmm.
So what did he do? He joined a military expedition of the Emperor Gordian III, and apparently not as a soldier, but as a member of the court.
Hmm.
And yeah, he traveled to the east. So the military expedition was against the Persians, so against the Sassanid Empire of the time. And unfortunately, this particular expedition was unsuccessful in the worst possible way. The emperor got killed. So it is theorized still that it was a coup, that the emperor was killed by his own men.
Hmm.
And if it is true that Plotinus was part of the court of the emperor, then it explains why he had to flee from there very fast.
Yeah.
So he says, it's reportedly he said that he escaped with great difficulty from great danger and came to Antioch, which is now more or less Syria. And from there, he went to Rome. At that point, he was 40 years old. And in Rome, he settled down. Maybe he thought, oh, this is too much adventuring for me. That was very hard.
Yeah.
Never again. So he spent in Rome the rest of his life. So he came there at 40 and he died when he was 66. And all that time, more or less, he was teaching philosophy in Rome.
Hmm.
So he lived in a house of a woman named Gemina, also with her daughter Gemina. And this house was apparently something like orphanage for rich kids.
Okay.
So upper class kids. That's so there is some connection to this upper class, and they were looking after the children, also the widows of senators, maybe. And Plotinus was there, and and his job was basically to be a tutor to those rich kids, which in ancient Rome meant that it's not tutoring like teaching, it's tutoring like being a legal representative of those children. So, for example, we have like Porphyry. I will tell later who it is. Porphyry reports that Plotinus basically did accounting of the children's property until they grow up, so their property is intact. So that was his
Interesting.
day job.
Yeah, right.
Accounting. Yes, but
Interesting.
yeah, of course, it's not like he was paid for it, but yeah.
Right.
This main occupation there was teaching little philosophy seminars, which were not like seminars to or lectures to make professional philosophers. They were open to everyone, so everyone basically could come and participate in discussion, and yeah. So it was more of a amateur society for philosophy.
Sure.
But he still had three devoted students who were really professional philosophers. So I would compare it to today's, you have a professor and the postdocs.
Yeah, right.
Postdocs do a lot of work.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was almost the case there as well. Yeah, so the first postdoc and the oldest one was Amelius, who joined Plotinus. Like in 1 year, Plotinus came to Rome, and it is reported he made a lot of recordings of his seminars, his lectures, but unfortunately, they all got lost. So these texts are lost.
Yeah.
Then there was Porphyry of Tyre, whom we can be thankful of collecting and editing the works of Plotinus, called the Enneads, at the end. And also there was Eustochius, who was actually a doctor, but he also produced his edition of Plotinus's work, but this was lost again. So all we have is the edition of Porphyry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so who was Porphyry? He was a professional philosopher at that time already. He arrived at Rome when he was around 30, and before he studied in Athens. And he so went to Plotinus. And first he was disagreeing with Plotinus on certain matters because his teacher Longinus in Athens had a different opinion on certain matters. So he was arguing with Plotinus and arguing with Amelius, but after a long discussion, like treatises were exchanged there. After a long discussion, Porphyry was converted to the ways of Plotinus and became his student. He always wants to point out that he was his favorite student, but
Yeah.
yes, Porphyry of Tyre assembled the works of Plotinus into the Enneads, which means the nines. He had all his writings, all Plotinus's writings, which he separated into 54, 54 treatises. So actually he had to do it artificially. He cut some of the treatises in little parts to just fit this number because he liked it for numerological reasons,
Yeah.
because apparently it was nice when you have 6 times 9. So 6 times 9 is 54, if I remember correctly. And yeah, he had to artificially separate some of the Plotinus's writings into these to fit this number.
Okay.
And he made it the 6 Enneads, the 6 nines, and he arranged the Plotinus's texts according to the topic. So from the easiest to the hardest by his view.
Yeah.
That's, so the easiest, the first Ennead is apparently ethics, so the
Okay.
ethical part. Then the second and the third are the physics, or what relates to the natural world.
Right.
Then the fourth is about soul, like human soul, the word soul. Fifth is about the intellect, the nous, and the one. And the sixth is also about intellect and the one, more or less, but also there comes more metaphysics in. Yeah. Okay. Also, why do we know all this about Plotinus? That he was born there and he traveled and so on. How his school looked like is that Porphyry made introduction to the Enneads called "On the Life of Plotinus and the Order of His Books," and there he recalled all these wonderful stories, all these anecdotes about Plotinus, about his school, about the Rome of the time. So it's a really fun read, to be
Nice.
honest.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
So another thing you asked was what were the influences, the main influences of Plotinus. So that he was a Platonist, first of all.
Right.
So he was a member of Platonic school. Probably his main influence was Ammonius Saccas, but we don't know anything about his views, more or less.
Right.
So we can say that just from the texts, Plato is the major influence, especially the Parmenides dialogue and Timaeus. Also the Republic, Phaedrus, Sophists, and so on. So Plotinus really likes these more metaphysical part of Plato, parts of Plato.
Right.
But that's not all. Another major influence is Aristotle. And this is especially obvious in the language, in the terms. For example, Plotinus very often uses words like substance, ousia, activity, energia. So dunamis, power, and so on. Another part where Aristotle's influence is evident is in the idea of divine intellect. So this unmoved mover, self-thinking thinker of metaphysics. This is obviously connected to Aristotle. Another influence and context are the Stoics. That's why I want to talk about Stoics today as well, a little bit. In specifically in the idea of logos as the rational governing principle of the universe, and also some ideas in ethics. Also, Plotinus seems to assume already that we have this power of assent, so this will, not necessarily free, but we have a will, the power of assent that Epictetus kind of introduced into Stoicism.
Right.
Yeah. Another influence that could be mentioned is that since Plato Academy, there was also a period of so-called Middle Platonists, which was just the Platonic school before Plotinus, in a more metaphysical term. So not the skeptics, but the more metaphysically minded folks.
Right.
And they were also interconnected with Neo-Pythagoreans, so the followers of Pythagoras or of the Pythagoreans. Their idea was to interpret the second part of Plato Parmenides as in a metaphysical way. Really, this negative theology stuff that is there. They took it seriously, and Plotinus as well. You also asked in the beginning what are the most read texts,
Yeah.
and one could say, "Oh, just the Enneads is the whole
Right.
corpus." But I would say that what was really influential and well read was Ennead, like first Ennead sixth treatise on beauty, which is kind of the first text that Plotinus apparently wrote that is included in the Enneads, and it's really accessible, and it deals with aesthetics, so to speak. And there, together with this text, should be read Ennead 5.8. So I will be saying it's like 5.8 means Ennead 5.8 treatises, like eighth
Right.
treatise.
Yeah.
On intelligible beauty, which is also a little bit connected to aesthetics. They go together very well. And another text that is quite famous and is often quoted is so 6.9, so Ennead 6, the ninth thesis, on the good or the one. So here, Plotinus, for the first time in his writing, really introduces the idea of the good, the one, his first principle, his like supreme God. Yeah, so these, I would say, are more famous texts.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a lot of helpful background on Plotinus. Now, as you just mentioned, we also want you to get a chance to talk about the Stoics as well, on kind of on the way to Plotinus. But before we even do that, we wanted to ask you about views in general that treat the conditions on free will sort of differently for good actions than for bad actions, because you want to say something like this about Plotinus's view. So the first view we want to ask about is what's sometimes called rational abilities views. So two proponents of the rational abilities view are former guests of this podcast, Susan Wolf and Dana Nelkin. Could you summarize their approaches and explain in what sense they're asymmetric views?
So I hope I don't misrepresent Susan Wolf, who was talking about her view before. So I listened to that episode. I will try my best. So Susan Wolf introduced so-called the reason view in her book Freedom Within Reason, mostly. And then it was expanded upon by Dana Nelkin in her book Making Sense of Freedom and Responsibility. And there she calls it rational abilities view. So I call it rational abilities view, but it's basically the same as the reason view of Susan Wolf. Why I was interested in talking about it or like remembering it is that oddly enough, I think it is the closest of modern views to Plotinus. So I heard about it in a seminar, and then I read the book, and it really had a certain Platonic ring to it.
Yeah.
Because what is the idea here is that first we take freedom freedom is a necessary condition of moral responsibility. So this is how we define freedom or find what it is. And according to the rational abilities view, an agent is morally responsible for an action if the agent was acting with the ability to do the good, right thing for the good, right reasons. So here, for the freedom to be present, the agent needs to have a set of like rational abilities that allow them to be in touch with the true and the good, as Susan Wolf puts it. So here, the agent needs not to be deceived about the true state of the world, both in the non-moral sense and in the moral sense. So Susan Wolf argues that for her view to work, there needs to be a somewhat objective rendering of different moral reasons. For example, that there exists better reasons and worse reasons, and this is an objective fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what an agent, free agent, needs to have is both epistemic competence about the world and also the normative competence about the good and bad reasons there are. And why is it asymmetric? From the definition, it follows that if a good person does something good for good reasons, she is still free, even though she couldn't have done otherwise. But if you have a person who did something bad for bad reasons, she's morally responsible only when she could have done otherwise, only when she could have acted well for good reasons. So here is the principle of alternate possibilities. It applies to the person who did a bad thing, but not necessarily to the person who did a good thing. So if you are good, you can be psychologically determined to do good things, and you are still free and morally praiseworthy. But if you are psychologically determined to do bad things, then you are not free and not blameworthy.
Yeah.
It's asymmetry lies in the principle of alternate possibilities here.
Yeah, that's a way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. The other type of view you survey in your thesis is what you call the view of an average Stoic, in quotation marks.
Yes,
What is this Stoic view of free will, and how does it compare to the rational abilities view?
So, why rational abilities view is reminiscent of the ancient views is that the Stoics and Plotinus viewed freedom not as a necessary condition for moral responsibility, but you need freedom to pursue a good life. So if you are free enough to be good or to pursue a good life, to be a virtuous person, then you are free, period. You can be determined, but it doesn't count because nothing prevents you from living a good life, and this is all that matters.
Yeah.
So this is kind of backdrop of Stoicism. So Stoics, first of all, were materialists and pantheists who view God and universe as identical. And they were also strict determinists. So for them, the chain of causes brought up inevitable results. But here's the caveat to this. So when we now think of determinism, for us, it's something brought about by the laws of physics, laws of nature that don't care about humans. so much, like not at all.
Right.
That's something blind. For Stoics, determinism was a set of causes and events that were set up by God, a benevolent God who created or like is the best world that could possibly be, the best possible world. And it's a God who genuinely cares to give all people the possibility to live a good life. So determinism for Stoics is fine-tuned for us to allow for a good life. Here, now I will tell like several marks that are interesting for us for later discussion of Plotinus. So
Yeah.
first, the metaphysics of Stoic souls is that first they were material, also part of the pneuma, the god, and also they didn't have parts. As for example, in Aristotle and in Plato, there's rational part and non-rational part. No, for Stoics, the whole soul of a rational creature, like humans, adult humans, is rational, is fully rational. And what distinguishes a rational soul is the ability to give or withhold assent to so-called impulsive impressions. So, for example, when I see a cake, I think so. My perception already has propositional content because my soul is wholly rational. So when I see the cake and feel, let's say not feel, but like there could be a pull for me to eat it now. This is an impulsive impression, and then me as a rational being, I can either like assent to the propositional impression saying it is good for me to eat this cake, or withhold assent, so disagree, and then I will not eat the cake. For animals, it's not in this way. So for animals, they don't have this power of assent, or non-rational beings don't have this power of assent. And for example, Michael Frede, I think he was German, he argues that this power of give or withhold assent is the first notion in history philosophy of will, how we understand it. And it was introduced by Epictetus, actually. Also, Epictetus argued that the only thing which is up to us or in our power is how we deal with our impressions. So basically, only will is in our power. So we assent to something or not. What Epictetus meant by this is that, for example, something, the result of our like action is not up to us. So, for example, someone wills to cross the street, but then like a bus comes by and hits them. So it is not up to us to cross the street. That could be the world can always thwart our attempts, and this is something that got to be influential. And I think Plotinus also subscribes to this notion that it is not up to us how it will turn out. Another thing that is important is the notion of freedom for Stoics. So, because a Stoic sage, only the Stoic sage is free, because she discarded all inappropriate attachments, and her will is no more enslaved to something external. So she's perfectly virtuous and perfectly free, and she does of her own account what God, so the Logos, wants her to do. So actually, because the God governs the world in the best possible way, then the virtuous person automatically assumes the same actions that God would want her to do anyway. So in this way, we have this compatibilism between determinism, like Stoic determinism,
Right.
and freedom of the sage. But it's too bad that almost no one is free, according to sources.
Yeah.
Not too many sages. Yeah.
Yeah, not too many sages. And all of us are enslaved to our passions, in a sense, and our will is not truly free. But again, this was all covered in the previous episode. Another thing I want to mention about the Stoic sage is that when you get to this level, your soul is fully rational. So if you get you reduce all inappropriate attachments, you completely erase them, then there's nothing that could even tempt you to do something wrong. A Stoic sage is a stable equilibrium because their soul is fully rational and they have no inappropriate attachments. This is not so for Plotinus, unfortunately. This is one ancient view of freedom, and how it compares to the rational abilities views, rational abilities view of Susan Wolf and Dana Nelkin, is that you still have this like asymmetry here between the good, like the virtuous life, which is free anyway, and the life of fools, which are all of us, which is not free. So for Stoics, there is like the only way to be free is to be good.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And that does connect up with our last episode. So this is a nice way of building on that. Well, turning now to Plotinus, can you describe the aspects of his metaphysics that are relevant to his views on free will? Maybe starting with his view of God and the world.
Yes, that's very important for understanding what's going on in Plotinus.
Right, right.
He has his own big philosophical system, which one needs to understand first to understand any little part of it. Like,
Hmm.
for example, his views on freedom. Um, so, first of all, Plotinus is a proper Platonist, and for him, the main parts or the most important parts of our world are immaterial.
Hmm.
So he completely opposes Stoics who see everything as material, as
Hmm.
pneuma. For Plotinus, there is our physical world, which is governed by the world soul, which has a similar function as a Stoic god in terms in
Mhm.
that she gives like the ordering and the providence of the world, and she also wants us to live the best life probably. But the world soul is an immaterial principle which is present to each part of the physical world as a whole. It's also an interesting piece of Plotinus mereology, so to speak, is that soul is indivisible and it's present to each point of the physical world as a whole. So it's not like part here. It's really this presence.
Hmm.
So this is the first layer, like first immaterial layer directly above the physical universe. Then there is the second layer, so higher level above the soul. It is called nous, or the intellect, which is a self-thinking thinker, world of platonic forms, the realm of all beauty and truth and divine knowledge, the paradigm of our mortal world, so to speak,
Hmm.
the eternal paradigm. So this is kind of the Platonic world of forms and the Aristotelian God, this self-thinking thinker,
Yeah.
mashed together.
Yeah. Hmm.
And but this is not the ultimate principle for Plotinus. He says that there is still a multiplicity present in this divine intellect because there are many thoughts, many forms. They all are connected, and the divine mind thinks all this plethora of forms. So it's not perfectly simple.
Mhm.
And Plotinus thinks that in order to explain something, you need to always simplify. The theory should be simpler and simpler and simpler.
Mhm.
And so he posed the one or the good as his final and highest principle of the world. This is his ultimate God.
Mhm.
And he took, so the concept of the one of the good is taken from first Plato's Parmenides. So there's the one,
Mhm.
and Plato's Republic, the form of the good. And
Mhm.
again, now they mesh together,
Right.
Yeah.
and you got this ultimate principle, the simplicity itself. So this is a rough sketch of Plotinus metaphysics.
Mhm.
And another thing I would mention before I go deeper into these principles is that Plotinus has like a specific notion of ontological dependence. So these three immaterial principles, ontologically depend on another. So the one doesn't depend on anything.
Mhm.
The intellect, the nous, depends on the one. It's like depends on the one. And then the soul depends on the intellect. This notion of ontological dependence is so-called double activity. Plotinus' system is often called emanationist.
Mhm.
So it's like
Mhm.
the one emanates the intellect emanates the soul, but this is not strictly speaking true because the double activity principle is that something that, for example, the intellect has its inner activity, like this perfect divine thought. But because of this inner activity, like activity of the essence of the intellect, the outer activity, which is soul, in this instance, kind of emerges.
Mhm.
So it doesn't flow out of the intellect;
Mhm.
it's a byproduct of the inner activity of the intellect, but it
Interesting.
doesn't really emanate and flow out. It just appears.
Mhm.
So, yeah, this is the principle that this hierarchical pyramid works upon. So, the one maybe has inner activity, maybe doesn't, but it certainly has outer activity, which is the unformed intellect,
Mhm.
and the like intellect then like turns back to the one and then becomes intellect. But we don't need to go into this part of metaphysics. And then the intellect has its inner activity, and then the outer activity of the intellect is soul,
Mhm.
like world soul, human souls, like the all multitude of souls.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the principle, the Plotinian principle of double activity. Okay, according to Plotinus, human souls are not simple; they have layers. So he's following Plato and Aristotle in the regard that human souls have rational and non-rational part, which is important for his notion of freedom. So the Plotinian anthropology is a complicated matter. I would say what is important here is that we have lower soul and higher soul and consciousness, or like both souls have the ability of representation, their representational faculty, which
Mhm.
is it meets in our consciousness. It's our awareness. Let's say. So again, the soul, according to Plotinus, has a higher part and lower part. The lower part is associated with the body and of the organic functions of the body or self-preservation, also appetites, and so on. You know what I mean.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And the higher part is reason.
Mhm.
And here's the interesting part about reason. According to Plotinus, our higher part of the soul is always connected to the world of forms. We are always connected to the intellect,
Mhm.
and this is why we have the power of reason at all. as far as I remember, the later Neoplatonists didn't quite agree with this point, and they wanted to separate like our personal intellect from the divine intellect. But Plotinus had this connection to the divine realm built in each rational soul.
Mm-hmm.
So it is not something we are aware of most of the time. Another an interesting part of Plotinian psychology is that he's very well aware that we have conscious parts and so-called subconscious parts. But for him, those subconscious parts are not the Freudian subconscious part.
Mm-hmm.
It's more the divine spark, like that we are not aware of. This connection to the world of forms.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You've already started talking about the nature of human beings. Is there anything else relevant to the way Plotinus thinks about humans? And how do these divisions in the human soul relate to his view of human agency?
Mm-hmm. Yes. According to Plotinus, our soul is complicated, a complicated matter. And what is important for human agency is that he distinguishes, or like implicitly distinguishes, two notions of self. So, first, we have the mundane self or the empirical self. That is just the contents of our consciousness, which we are something we are aware of. So there are conscious deliberations, emotions, bodily sensations, perceptions, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So what we normally call consciousness nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
But also there is the true self, which is the reason, the upper part of reason, which is connected to the intellect, which is, I would say, would correspond to our conscience.
Mm-hmm.
So, because the intellect is not only the realm of truth, but also the realm of goodness and virtue and beauty, we have this little point in ourselves that always knows what is right or wrong. So we can try to silence it, but it is there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this is, according to Plotinus, our true self. How it connects to freedom? Well, first, let's start from the beginning. He
Mm-hmm.
wrote one big treatise on free will and the will of the one. So the first part of the treatise is about the human freedom, but then the second part is about the freedom of the one, the first principle.
Mm-hmm.
And also he mentions human freedom and moral responsibility in his work on providence, which is third Ennead, third treatise.
Yeah.
So I will start with on free will and the will of the one. So there, Plotinus thinks about what is up to us. What do we feel is really up to us? And he first introduces this pre-philosophical notion that one might have. And if you allow me to quote, he says that whatever we might do, when not enslaved to chances or compulsions or strong passions, because we willed it and with nothing opposing our will, this would be in our power. But if this is so, our notion of what is in our power would be something enslaved to our will and would come to pass to the extent to which we willed it. So, this long passage basically means to say that in our pre-philosophical maybe thinking, we would say that something is in our power when nothing prevents us from doing it, and also it's our will that causes the action.
Right.
But then he starts to ask, what is really our will? What
Mm-hmm.
does it mean for like this rational desire to be ours? And it turns out that our, in this sense, is our true self, this higher reason that is always connected to the world of forms. So, for example, he says that when you are just rationalizing a desire of your body, for example, you think it is good for me to eat something, then you are not free. It was forced by you by on you by your lower soul. Then, for example, when you think about something and make a mistake in your thinking, then it's also not something up to you because you are led astray by mistake. It's not something that you yourself thought properly because you made a mistake. And your true self, the highest point of reason, which is connected to the world of truth, world of forms, actually is never mistaken. Also, the same thing is like, okay, maybe you thought it through and you arrived to like a correct result, but you made several mistakes, but they canceled out and in your reasoning. So you arrive at something like some action that is good to do, but then you don't really understand properly why is it so. You like arrive at the result, oh, children should be saved from drowning,
Right.
but you don't really know why. You kind of got there, but you don't really understand. Then this would be not up to you as well. Like this desire, it is good that I save a drowning child. That will also not be up to you if you don't really understand the reason.
Yeah, that sets a pretty high bar for free action.
It is. But thankfully, he doesn't make freedom the condition of moral responsibility. Like similarly to Stoics, the moral responsibility is way more common than freedom.
Right.
Yeah,
That's interesting.
for Stoics, there is almost no freedom, but everyone is guilty, so everyone
Right.
is morally responsible. For Plotinus, I think freedom is more achievable, but let's talk about it later. But also, moral responsibility is way more common. Okay, so but then Plotinus in the same treatise talks about that really even our virtuous actions are not self-determined. So first we saw, okay, the only things that are up to us are virtuous actions where you truly understand the moral reasons, like truly well understood. But then he says, okay, but you are a good human, you are a virtuous human, and now you are just going on your way and there are children drowning and you have to act. So the world kind of makes you act in a certain way. So you cannot say your action is self-determined or determined by yourself. It's determined by your virtue and the world that makes a prompt for you to act. So he says that we can only be free or self-determined in action in a qualified sense. So he says that only virtue, so virtuous person is free, so her virtue is free, and that echoes the Plato's virtue has no master, and only our reason in like thinking and deliberating correctly, like according to the intellect of the world of forms, is free, but our actions that flow from this reasoning are free only in a qualified sense, in like in secondary sense.
Yeah.
So the one Platonian researcher scholar puts it, Eyolfur Emerson, he says that okay, it's obvious that the freedom or self-determination in actions is parasitic upon the inner freedom of virtue that we have. Then the question is, okay, my reason, okay, this is truly me. My true self is my reason, which is never wrong. So my conscience is connected to the world of forms of all goodness, beauty, and so on. But then what about the world of forms itself, the divine intellect? Is it free? If like my reason is an image of that divine intellect. And this is what Plotinus spends the rest on the of the treatise on the free will and the will of the one to sort out this question. Because, okay, first we have intellect. We have to prove that intellect is free and self-determined. But then, because it's ontologically dependent on the one, we need to prove that the one is self-determined.
Yeah.
And to cut all the like 30 pages of metaphysics for you, summarize it. The only truly autonomous agent or principle in the world is the one, because it's literally cause of itself. It's like it's causa sui, like a proper monotheistic God.
Right.
Yeah. So it is the only truly autonomous, like radically free principle in the world. And all the others, like even the intellect who strives for the good, it's still the intellect strives for something that is outside of, it's out of the intellect, above. And the soul, like our rational soul, strives for the intellect and the good, but it's still like depends and strives for something that is external to us. And
Right.
only the one is self-caused and wills itself in the best possible way.
Yeah.
That does sound a lot like Aristotle's conception of the divine. Yeah. Well, you already said a little bit about how Plotinus's view is connected with the Stoics. Could you say a little bit about how it compares to the rational abilities view from Susan Wolf and Dana Nelkin?
The rational abilities view, the reason view, presupposes the agent connection to the true and the good. So, and this sounds a little bit like Plotinus. So, in one of the explanations of the rational abilities view, it is said that it is similar to the real self view, but then there's additional condition for the real self to have an access to the true and the good. And Plotinus actually literally does that.
Right.
So he poses our true self, our reason, which is directly linked to the universal true and good. And this is maybe the most striking similarity there.
Well, we've talked about Plotinus' view of freedom. What implications does this have for how he thinks about moral responsibility?
A good question. So moral responsibility is, as I said, way more common than true freedom, as for Stoics. But what is really brings the rational abilities view of Susan Wolf and Dana Nelkin together with Plotinus' view is that in his treatise on providence, Plotinus explicitly says that a bad person is uniquely blameworthy because he has another free principle. So he says that if a person, like a human, was simple as an animal, so just had certain nature and acting according to this nature, then there's no blameworthiness. But a rational being, a human, has this higher principle of reason that he failed to act according to. Therefore, he is blameworthy. So this maps really nicely onto the rational abilities view in my mind.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So the moral responsibility could be that, okay, you had the option to act upon your reason, and reason meaning like moral reasons that you can upload from the world of forms, but you failed. Therefore, you are morally responsible.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though you lack true freedom, you're still responsible because you had this as an option or something like that.
Yes, you had the option to be free, and you
Right.
didn't take it.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much again, Anna, for joining us. This has been great. Where can listeners go to follow your work?
So my physics work is on Google Scholar. It's just Anna Viatkina Google Scholar profile. But unfortunately, I'm not as active in philosophical academia as I would like to be. So none of my philosophy essays are up in the internet. But I'm actually thinking of making a Substack. Maybe it's the time to do it.
There you go.
So if you are listening to this, like from a year from now, maybe it exists. It
There
doesn't
you go.
yet, but maybe it will.
Nice. Yeah, thanks again, Anna. In our next episode, we'll talk about Augustine of Hippo, and our guest will be Jesse Cohenhoven.